My husband left me for his work wife. Now she's mad I refuse to have a relationship with him. My ex Tom left me for Tammy 2 years ago. The first time I met her at a work event while I was 8 months pregnant with my youngest, she literally looked me up and down and said, "Better up your wife game or I might steal him." I laughed it off, thinking she was joking. 3 months later, she actually did it. This woman showed up at our house with Tom to help him pack the day he moved out. While I was holding our crying baby, she tried pulling me aside for a one-on-one conversation about how she wanted our relationship to work going forward because she was going to be a permanent part of my life. Then she winked and said, "Told you I'd steal him away." Honestly, I'm thankful she did, because when Tom made a comment defending her by saying she's only 23, her brain isn't fully developed yet, I got the ick so bad it turned my heartbreak into pure relief. This man really left his family for someone whose frontal lobe hasn't finished forming. I got everything in the divorce: the house, most assets, everything. We agreed to 50-50 custody because I wanted the kids to have both parents. I stay civil at school events and sports games, so there's no drama, but outside of co-parenting, I couldn't care less about either of them. Everything was fine until last June. Tammy showed up for pickup instead of Tom and practically skipped toward me, shoving her hand in my face to show off this massive engagement ring. She was going on and on about wedding plans and then said she wanted me as a bridesmaid, along with my daughters as flower girls. I just looked at her and said, while loading the kids' stuff. She kept talking about color schemes and venues, and I kept giving her one-word responses. She got visibly upset and left. A few hours later, Tom texted me saying I was being unnecessarily difficult and that Tammy was just trying to include me in their lives. September came around, and the same thing happened. The second I opened my car door at pickup, Tammy blurted out, "I'm pregnant," and she put her hand on her stomach and said, "Tom's finally getting a son." I looked at her and deadpan replied, "I'm sure Lord Tom is thrilled to finally have an heir to carry on his noble bloodline and inherit his lands and titles." She didn't find it funny. Tom called me later, asking why I couldn't just be happy for them. I didn't see much of Tammy after that. Tom handled most of the pickups through December. I figured maybe she was having a rough pregnancy or finally got the hint that we weren't going to be besties. Then today happened. Tom pulled up for pickup with Tammy in the passenger seat. As they both got out and walked toward me, I noticed immediately that Tammy wasn't showing anymore. She looked like she'd been crying for days. They reached me and Tammy's eyes filled with tears. She said quietly, "We lost the baby." There was this heavy silence and they both just stood there looking at me, clearly expecting some kind of reaction. I didn't say anything to Tammy. I just turned to Tom and said, "Our second daughter has a birthday party tomorrow at 3 p.m. and the oldest has gymnastics at 5 p.m. Don't be late." Tammy completely lost it. She started screaming at me right there in the driveway, calling me a heartless B-word and saying I was a terrible person. Tom jumped in saying I could at least show a little humanity toward Tammy, and that regardless of my personal feelings, she is my kid's stepmother and deserves basic respect. I looked directly at Tom and said, "I don't care about what you're going through. Outside of our kids, I don't care about either of you, and I don't owe Tammy anything. Not my sympathy, not my friendship, nothing." Tom called me an a-hole along with several other choice words, grabbed the kids, and left. Tammy was still crying in the passenger seat as they drove away. Normally, this kind of thing wouldn't even faze me, but later that night, my ex-in-laws called. I actually have a really good relationship with them. They were furious at Tom for what he did and have always supported me, but even they said I should have shown Tammy some empathy and at the very least pretended to care for the sake of the kids. That made me second-guess myself. Like, am I actually the a-hole here? Should I have offered condolences? But then I remembered her standing in my living room while my baby cried, joking about stealing my husband. I remembered her showing up to my house uninvited, trying to dictate how our relationship would work. I remembered every boundary she crossed while acting like we were going to be best friends. The woman who made that comment while I was pregnant doesn't get my sympathy now.